assassination. He was
high-ranking military officials in the country, starting from the head or the commander of IRGC, Revolutionary Guards, to defense minister of the country, to chief of staff of armed forces, and to other military high-ranking officials that are all confirmed to be killed in these strikes. All in all, what I can say is that we are dealing with no signs or signals of de-escalation, specifically seeing the very recent statement by Ali Larijani, the Secretary for Iran's National Security Council, who came out to reiterate that Iran is not going to negotiate with the United States, something that we already heard from the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Under this tough situation that runs the risk of further escalation, ramping up to a next unprecedented level for the years, for the days, weeks, and maybe months down the road.
All right, that's a picture in Iran. As I say, explosions are still being heard across Gulf countries as Iran continues its attacks. In Kuwait, a fighter jet has been filmed falling from the sky. There has been no official announcement about this from the Kuwaiti government, but a pilot appears to have ejected and has survived. We're working to verify more information on this incident. Smoke has also been seen rising from the vicinity of the US Embassy in Kuwait. Okay, let's cross now to Axel Zamovich, who's live here in Doha monitoring the situation, and I understand you have been gleaning more information about what's going on in Kuwait, Axel.
Well, we don't have much information about the fact that Kuwait is having a very difficult few hours this morning, but what we understand that the F-15 fighter jet crashed down at near Ali Al-Salam Air Base, which hosts the U.S. and international forces. But we don't know the details of this one. There are some unverified lines that Kuwait's air defenses intercepted something. It could be the falling debris, but we're still waiting for official confirmation for that. But what's really striking development in this one, as you mentioned, there is a video circulated on social media that's showing a pilot excuse me, I'm just reading now these lines, they're coming to me. So that social media video, it's showing that the pilot managed to save himself, but also there is thick plumes of smoke rising from the site near Al-Jahra region in Kuwait. So we still don't know the fullest circumstances of this one, but we're still waiting official confirmation on that.
Okay, so that's a picture there. What about here in Doha? We were talking earlier about feeling the impacts of interceptions going on here in Qatar. Have we heard any more? What's been happening?
It's quiet now, but it was like an hour or maybe even more than that. We heard 4 separate explosions, what we believe to be the Patriot defense system being activated again. So they were intercepting. We still don't know, is it a missile or a drone coming from Iran? But we know that there were loud bangs on Monday morning. We couldn't see much because it was cloudy morning here in Doha, but we're still waiting official confirmation from the Qatari officials on that one.
All right, Axel, thanks for that. Axel Zamovich here in Doha. Now, earlier, my colleague Folly Batabo spoke with Alanud Hamad Saud Al-Thani, who's a political analyst and a fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. And she says that Gulf states were not expecting the scale and the reach of Iran's retaliation.
Quick, maybe, but so wide, I think no one really anticipated that such a thing would happen. And unanticipated does not necessarily mean unprepared. I mean, we've seen the response, all the Gulf states were quite prepared for it. However, if we look at the attack that happened from Israel on Iran, we see that they had 3 main objectives. The first was the leadership, the second was the infrastructure, but the third, they needed Iran to play into it for them to achieve that objective, and that objective was to bring the entire region into this meat grinder. And it's quite unbelievable for everyone that Iran would walk face first, eyes wide open into such a trap.
Right. So when you say they were clearly prepared, even though the attack was wide and perhaps not expected to be that wide, in the case of Qatar, it successfully thwarted dozens of Iranian missiles. But how long can it continue to do this? How long can Gulf states continue to push back with their air defenses? Is this sustainable?
So, sustainable, the Gulf states have great relations with very many security partners, so there is no worry from that side. But sustainable, we also have to think about the economy and we have to think about the people and regional stability. No one wants this to go on any longer than yesterday, not even at all. And so I have all the confidence that they are able to thwart these attacks. However, should they have to? No, they shouldn't.
Well, from propping up Iran's last Shah to killing the supreme leader, the United States has a long history of interference and hostility with Tehran. Peter Culhane takes a look now at how the two nations have grown from being allies to adversaries.
The Shah of Persia has been paying a state visit to President Truman.
For more than 80 years, U.S. presidents have put an unusual focus on Iran.
Iran.
Beginning in World War II, Britain and the United States used Iran to funnel weapons to help Russia fight Nazi Germany. Successive presidents hosting, supporting, and applauding the Shah, Mohammad Pahlavi. In 1952, U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower authorized Operation Ajax, giving the CIA authority to launch a coup, along with the British, to restore the Shah to power, after the Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, sought to nationalize the country's oil industry. President Eisenhower then sought to bolster the Shah with the Atoms for Peace program in 1957, giving Iran highly enriched uranium and training its scientists in hopes that it would encourage civilian use and not lead to building a nuclear weapon.
Our defense, therefore, will be stronger if, under appropriate security safeguards, we share with our allies certain knowledge of the tactical use of our nuclear weapons.
President John F. Kennedy welcomed the Shah to Washington. President Richard Nixon and President Jimmy Carter even visited Tehran.
Iran, because of the great leadership of the Shah, is an island of stability.
A show of U.S. support for the increasingly authoritarian Shah, who in 1979 fled the country, and Ayatollah Khomeini took power of the newly named Islamic Republic of Iran. In November of 1979, when President Carter allowed the Shah to come to the U.S. for medical treatment, students took over the U.S. Embassy, taking 52 Americans hostage. That and a botched rescue all but assured Carter's defeat to Ronald Reagan. The hostages were released as soon as he took office.
Fellow Americans.
During President Reagan's time in office, the U.S. secretly supported Iraq in its war with Iran, providing intelligence and economic aid to the Iraqi military. In 1983, the U.S. blamed Hezbollah, backed by Iran, for bombing the Marine barracks in Beirut, killing 241 Marines. It was later uncovered that the Reagan administration was also secretly selling weapons to Iran in order to fund rebels in Nicaragua. And in 1988, tensions increased when the U.S. Navy accidentally shot down an Iranian passenger jet, killing the 290 people on board. Modern presidents continued to try to pressure Iran with increasing sanctions, but after the September 11th attacks, then President George W. Bush put Iran high on the nation's enemies list, including it, along with North Korea and Iraq, in the axis of evil.
Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror, while an unelected few repress the Iranian people's hope for freedom.
President Barack Obama took a different approach, making an agreement with Iran along with other world powers to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. A deal President Donald Trump ripped up in his first term, also launching a strike in Iraq to kill Qasem Soleimani, the leader of Iran's Quds Force. Now in his second term, launching military strikes for a second time, openly calling for regime change, a new and deadly chapter in a long history of U.S. involvement in Iran. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, let's unravel the very latest situation. We speak now to Rasul Surda, who's reported extensively from Iran. And first of all, Rasul, we're seeing these ongoing attacks into Iran, strikes coming in to the country. And we're now on day 3 of this. So it's been going on some time, likely to continue. It makes you wonder, how much longer can the country continue to absorb these strikes?
I think the resilience level, the tolerance of the pain in Iran is extremely high. Let's remember, this country have been invaded just at the beginning of the Second World War, Russians and Brits back then. And then there has been a revolution in '79 and 8 years of a bloody war with Iraq. So officially, more than 250,000 people have been killed during the war that lasted for 8 years, starting from 1980 up until '88. But unofficially, many believe that it was over 1 million people who have been killed during that war. And then the sanctions, all the tensions with the global powers, Israel, the USA, the Western countries, and so on, and the economic hardships and so on. So in that sense, the country somehow adopted itself to leave or to continue with very limited resources and to absorb the pain. So that's why, particularly in the last war, 12 days war, they have seen that being able to absorb the pain and the pressure for a longer period perhaps is going to be the only way that they can deal with the United States and with Israel's tremendous resources.
Okay, so their tolerance for pain is high, but how long can it continue to respond by striking back against Israel and indeed striking around the region here?
Yeah, indeed, that is also another concern for Iranians. So last time in June, we have seen that Iranians will simply attack Israel with a barrage of the rockets, the missiles, tons of them being fired at once. Now we're seeing that it is low intensity, but it is constant. And two reasons for that. First, Iranians, they have realized that actually the Israelis' tolerance of pain also is quite high. So what to do then? Keep it constant, keep them on alert always, and make sure that their life also is not going to be normalized, not going to be interrupted. They're not seeking for the interruption. They are seeking for a constant abnormalcy in Iran and in Israel. And to achieve that, they need to keep low intensity, but constant. Another thing, the reason for that is because Iran's missile and drone stocks are also limited at the end of the day, and they're preparing for a prolonged war. They do not want to deplete their resources. So if it's going to last for months, then they should be careful how much of them, their ammunition that they are using, and how long they can go on. So that is a part of their strategy.
The countries in the Gulf region bearing the brunt are being targeted very much by Iran. How long can they continue to absorb Iranian strikes?
Indeed, I think Iranians are playing on this big time. So as they have realized that the Israelis' tolerance of pain is high during the last war, now they're raising the cost for the United States, so they changed the strategy, and they're raising the cost for the regional countries because they believe the regional countries' fragility is quite something. So by constantly firing drones and missiles and close to the regional countries, so far there has been 8-9 countries in the region that has been coming under Iranian attack, and closing the airspaces, closing the shopping malls, simply putting the life on a hold. They believe that the wealthier countries like Gulf, so the countries that have been enjoying the luxury, enjoying the stability, the wealth, and the safety, so creating a sense of abnormalcy here and bringing life to a halt is somehow going to put a tremendous pressure on them, and they are going to put tremendous pressure on the United States to stop.
Right, but on the other hand, it's also making enemies of the regional countries who have already expressed their right to respond.
Absolutely. It reminds me, Nick, of the days that we're heading toward the first Gulf War. So the diplomacy failed, and Saddam started not only to hit Israel, but also to fire the Scud missiles to Saudi Arabia. And eventually what has happened, the regional countries, they came under the umbrella of the United States, and they have joined the US-led global and regional coalition against Iraq. And so if this continue, this strategy could backfire, and eventually the regional countries could say, well, it's enough. So Iran is becoming more and more a shared threat, the common threat, and they could join the US-led coalition.
All right, Russell, hang on there a second. I'm going to come back to you in just a moment. But let's have a look now at some of the missiles that Iran is deploying. The Shahab-1 and Fateh 110 are considered short-range, traveling about 300 kilometers. The Rad 500, Shahab-2 and Fateh 313 can reach nearly 500 kilometers. And with a range of nearly 1,000 kilometers are the Dezful and Kara missile systems, and the Shabab-3 that's estimated to reach roughly 1,300 kilometers. So we got all these different munitions, but as you say, the stockpiles, they're limited.
It's limited, and Nick, economic resources are also limited. So war is an expensive game. And these defense products are extremely expensive stuff. Compared to the US products, yes, they're less cheaper, but let's remember last year, Iran's total export figure was roughly around $60 billion.
Yeah.
And it has a huge population of 90 million, and now it is going through the international sanctions and regional pressure, isolated from the region, from the globe, and the sanctions and the economic hardships. It is so $60 billion for such a country is extremely, extremely limited resources, and you need to use that resources and produce such expensive products. So that's why it's not only about the limited number of these missiles, but also they need to be replaced. And to be replaced, you need to spend money. But then when you go and see that actually your reserves are not available. So that's why I think Iran is facing an extremely, extremely dire situation. But they have to respond because, on the other hand, they know that the survival of the regime and perhaps the survival.
From communication to project management to knowledge management in one app, accelerated by the world's most productive AI. 4.0 is the epicenter for all of your work and collaboration. It's the beginning of a new meta category of apps that will define the next generation of software in the AI age. And it ushers in a new era of craft and quality for ClickUp's product. We've always said that using ClickUp saves you one day every week, but I'm confident that you're going to save a lot more than that with 4.0. Because when all of your work converges into one app, one tab, one AI workspace, everything just clicks.
Other leverages as well. So far, Hezbollah last night have fired some of the rockets to Israel in retaliation of the killing of Ali Khamenei, but still is not fully involved yet. And in Iraq, we are still not seeing that Iran's the proxies, particularly Kataib Hezbollah, is still not involved yet fully. They are threatening to be involved. Houthis are still fully not involved. And also another thing, there are loyal communities across the region and even in the Western countries, they are still not mobilized. So I think it's still time for that. So it's a gradual escalation for that. And Hormuz, roughly 20% of the global oil supplies are happening through Hormuz. And Iran so far has been partially closing some parts of Hormuz, but they did